session. We see the number of people just increasing and climbing up with every nanosecond. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to jump right into introducing our next speaker, Allison. Allison is a senior software engineer at DoorDash and founder at ATAS Fund. Currently at DoorDash Labs, she's the technical lead of simulation and evaluation and is working to improve autonomy. Allison will be speaking about how she created 3 different games of different genres and was covered by Engadget while on her sabbatical. My goodness. Welcome, Allison. Take it away.
Thanks. And sorry, I'm a senior staff software engineer. So welcome to my talk today. And I'm going to talk about the games that I created during my sabbatical and kind of the lessons learned from that. So I like to start my talk with the key takeaways. So here are kind of the takeaways. First is that taking a sabbatical really helps tremendously with burnout. So I was very, very lucky to be able to take a sabbatical, and it really helped me a lot there. The other thing is that I learned that developing games can be really, really fun, but it can also be a lot of work. And lastly, community building is hard, but it's important and ultimately very rewarding. So first, I'm going to give a quick introduction to myself. So who am I? This is kind of how I usually describe myself. I'm a proud mom. I'm a roboticist. I'm a software engineer. So my education is, my background is in robotics. I had a PhD from CMU there, and I've been doing software engineering for a number of years now. And if you look at my LinkedIn, you kind of have a look at my career path, and it looks like a straight line. I think if you look at people's resumes in general, this is kind of how it looks for like people with careers just have one step after another. But is it really a straight line? I think kind of like what Olaf says. I think this will all make sense when I'm older. And the way I think about it is, in our life, whether it's a career or like in general, there's a lot of twists and turns. But ultimately, is how do we want to tell the story? How do we want to plot the line with all the data, like all the data points all over the place? So in the previous slide, you saw a straight line. If you're interested, I can tell you all the twists and turns in there. But ultimately, I just want to say, if you feel that you don't know what direction you're going, if you feel like it has a lot of twists and turns, I think that happens to everyone. So essentially, why did I end up taking a sabbatical? I think one of the big reasons I did a sabbatical is that I hadn't really taken a real gap from work since before my PhD. So the way it happened was that after I did my PhD, I started my next job, and then after that, I start my next one and so on. Maybe there was like a week or two in between, but not an actual like gap to take a real break. So that was one of the big reasons I felt like I really wanted to kind of take a gap. The other thing was COVID-19. So I'm sure everyone was affected by COVID-19. There's a lot of burnout because of it. So this also affected myself and my family a lot. One of the kind of interesting things that happened was I flew back to Singapore. This was early 2020, before the vaccines and all that. And at the airport, they were doing tests, and I happened to have a fever. So they put me in an ambulance. That's kind of the picture you see in the top right there. And then they drove me straight to the hospital for like COVID testing and everything. It turned out it was negative, but it was quite an adventure. I actually wrote a Medium article about the whole process. But COVID-19 was a big thing, a lot of stress, so I needed to kind of take a break from it. The other thing was that I was working at RideOS for a number of years, and the company itself had just been acquired by GoPath. So I worked at GoPath for a number of months. We did, handover and all of that, and I kind of felt that now it was a good time to take a break. So that was part of the reason why, in terms of sabbatical, it was kind of a good spot. And also, I wanted to have more bandwidth for my wife and my daughter. So working, you have a little bit of time at the end of the day and on weekends, but not that much mental bandwidth. So I really wanted to have more time for them. And lastly, I've always wanted to create games, especially with my daughter. So she's 10 now. And I have a video here that I'm going to show. This is a game that I actually worked on when I was working at RideOS. So this is like, I did this in my free time then. It's kind of a game a little bit inspired by like Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, and things like that, where essentially you play a character, you can gain relationships, you can do things like harvest minerals, build things, and all that. So this was kind of the scope of the game that we wanted to do. But it turned out that, as is the case with a lot of like first-time game developers, this is what I learned after the fact. We actually create games that have too large of a scope. So this was Mystery Queen is kind of the game that I still want to do one day. And my daughter keeps asking me when we're going to continue working on it. But essentially, the scope of the game initially was too big, so we never quite finished it. At least right now. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff. But before I started my sabbatical, I had a bunch of thoughts in my mind, right? One of the big thoughts was, am I going to get bored, right? What I was worried about is, okay, if I'm going to take a year, will I get too bored? Will I get itchy to work? Because I've heard stories where people are like, after a while they're like, oh no, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should just go back to work and things like that. So that was something that I wanted to figure out if that would happen to me. The other thing was, would I get too anxious about not earning income? So remember I said, like, since before my PhD, I've been working without a big gap. So this was the first time that I'm going to have like a big gap, and I was thinking, is it going to cause any anxiety there? And lastly, a very important question is, if I take this sabbatical, like, would I be able to find a job afterwards? I think I was lucky that I did this sabbatical before all the tech layoffs. So at the time, the market was still pretty hot. So this turned out to be okay. But so that was how I thought my sabbatical would start, and this is how it actually started. So I mentioned that there was a lot of burnout, right? So when I started my sabbatical, I actually had a lot of sessions with my therapist, and we worked through a whole bunch of work issues. So I want to say, mental health is very, very important. Make sure you prioritize it. And on on the right of this slide is kind of a poster that I saw. I think this was taken in Singapore, and I think this is one of the best posters I've seen about mental health, and it's really, really good. And when I talked through a lot of the issues with my therapist, I think one of the big pieces of advice she gave me with regards to my sabbatical was to actually write a letter to myself about why I took the sabbatical. And when she told me to do it, I was like, why bother to do this? I know why I'm doing it. But in hindsight, it was great advice, because during the course of my sabbatical, I actually asked myself multiple times things like, why did I take this sabbatical? Maybe I should have just continued working, things like that. And then I would read the letter to myself and be like, yep, taking a sabbatical was the right thing to do. So, if you ever take a sabbatical, I highly suggest writing a letter to yourself. The other piece of advice that she gave me was to actually have a bunch of savings, move money from savings to checking monthly to simulate a salary coming in. Even if all you do is after it comes in, you can move back to savings. And when she told me this again, I was like, why? Ultimately, I'm just moving money from one account to another account and then back again. Like, why bother? Right? And then she told me that it makes a difference mentally to feel that you're still getting some sort of income. And it does work, surprisingly. So this is something that you can consider doing it if you ever want to consider doing a sabbatical. But overall, what I want to say is mental health is really, really important. So you do prioritize that. Okay, so on to the games that I created. I mentioned Mystery Queen just now, where it was a game that ended up scope being a bit too large. So I wanted to create my first kind of actual game, kind of a full-fledged like game, and I called it "You Are What You Eat." And the idea is that I wanted to do something simple, so something with a very, very small scope. So I chose to have a game with a single input, and it's inspired by Ninja, where it was a mobile game that I played on my phone. I forget when. So the idea is that in the game itself, when you hit the screen, the slime will jump, right? And based on what color you are and what features you have, it affects what you can and cannot eat. So the concept of the game is pretty straightforward. You can just hit the screen and it jumps. Sometimes you get a little bit of abilities with this. But the scope of the game was small enough that I could finish the game, play through it, improve it, and all of that to finally close the loop of creating a whole game. Right. So this was my first like full actual game. And at the time, I bought myself a Lioness. And if you're not familiar with the Lioness, it's a smart vibrator with AI and biofeedback. So when I saw the ad for this, the kind of the keywords really struck to me, right? Because it's smart, it has AI and biofeedback. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a robot. So I got myself one. It's wonderful for what it does. And what's also really nice is that it uses Bluetooth to connect to your phone. So then I reached out to the Lioness team on LinkedIn, and they were really, really helpful. They provided me with the API, so that allowed me to actually connect my game with the Lioness. And what this means is that the Lioness itself has sensors and it has vibrators, so I could actually control the slime with the Lioness. So here's a little video of how that works. Right, so whenever the slime eats something, the Lioness itself would vibrate. There are different kinds of vibrations, and also when you squeeze it, right, you can control the slime to jump. Right. So if you hear the video a little bit, you can kind of hear the vibrations happening. So there are different kinds of vibrations to kind of indicate what's happening in the game. And I realized that from the original game to the Lioness version, you actually had to tweak it to be a little bit slower because tapping the screen you can do that a lot faster compared to squeezing it. So that was how I incorporated the Lioness into You Are What You Eat. So that was kind of like the first game that was wrapped up with two different versions. And then the second game that I wanted to create was called Setter Simulator. So this was around November 2021. GitHub does a game jam for, I think, every year. So it's a month-long game jam where essentially at the start of the game jam, they gave you a theme. And for 2021, the theme was bugs. And during this 1 month, you're supposed to create a game. And then I wanted to create a game with limited scope. So I created You Are What You Eat, which was a small game. And I was like, okay, now that I've done that, let's make a game that's a little bit bigger. So I was like, okay, 1 month is a lot of dev time, so that will allow me to create a pretty decent game. So how did I pick the game? Essentially, I love simulation. If you look at what I've done professionally, I've done a whole bunch of simulation, and it was near Christmas, so I was like, okay, let's put the two things together and create Santa Simulator. And kind of the idea of the game is that Santa Claus is sick, remember COVID-19, so he's asking for help to distribute gifts for Christmas. And in order to do that, you can hire different bugs to help you. There are two different roles. You have preppers that wrap the presents and movers that deliver the gifts. Each bug has its own statistics in terms of how fast it moves and its capacities. And when you actually hit play, you can see that the bugs kind of move around the world to distribute the gifts. And what's actually interesting about that is that it actually uses the OSM OpenStreetMaps for the bugs to follow the roads, except the bees that fly directly there. So they have different capabilities as well. So by choosing which kind of bugs you want to hire and all that, you can actually affect your final stats, which they show. So the game is kind of an optimization tycoon game if you're into that kind of things, and it allows you to kind of figure out what is the optimal set of bugs that you should hire for distribution of presents on Christmas. And this was Santa Simulator. So I created that, and this was kind of what my day-to-day looked like during that 1 month game jam, right? And if you look at the schedule that I have, you'll start to think, this looks like a little bit like a full-time job. And it is, I would say, maybe a little bit worse than a full-time job because I was working on Santa Sim during office hours and also at night. So it turned out a little bit worse than I thought. So my lessons learned from doing Santa Sim is that a game jam is a wonderful experience with a great community. So there are a lot of people that are really, really nice. They're really helpful. We shared our progress. We talked about what we did, things like that. So it was wonderful. I really enjoyed the process and the community. But I've learned that it's very, very possible to work too hard even during a sabbatical. And one of the questions I asked myself multiple times during this month was why does this feel like a full-time job or worse? And I didn't really want to. I took a sabbatical to get a break, not to find myself in the full-time job, right? So ultimately, I was proud of what I accomplished, but also very, very, very tired. So then what I needed to do was to actually take a break during my sabbatical, which is kind of funny in hindsight. So it happened that my mom came to visit the States for 3 months because I was on my sabbatical, and I said, it's a perfect time to come visit. So we decided to go on a long road trip so we can kind of have a look at our path that we did for winter break. My daughter was off school, so we did this super long road trip. That was wonderful. And then I also took the time to play some video games that had on my list for ages. So I played Horizon Zero Dawn. Wonderful game, and a bunch of other games as well. So this break during my sabbatical was wonderful. I enjoyed it, and it felt like an actual holiday at this point. Right. So back to the takeaway. So I've talked about those two, and now we'll talk about the last point about community building. So I mentioned You Are What You Eat earlier. I created the game, but at that point, around when I started on Santa Simulator, I finished the game, but I hadn't actually launched it yet. And the reason why I didn't actually launch it was that launching a game on the mobile app stores was a little tricky. I wanted to set up an LLC and all that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of process involved. So in October 2021, Liz, who is the CEO of Linus, actually reached out to her journalist contacts about the game, and I was interviewed by Shalene from Engadget in December. So this was a great experience. She asked me about what the game was about. How do you get in touch with it? How do you play and things like that. So if you're interested, you can have a look at the Engadget article. It was published in January 22. And once she published this video, my YouTube video, the one that you saw just now, the views actually spiked up by 10,000. So if I'm not a like social media person, so 10,000 views to me is a ton. So usually my videos that I post on YouTube get like, if I get 100 views, I'm pretty happy. So 10,000 was awesome, and till today it hit like 19,000. So that's pretty cool. And so the article itself created a whole lot of interest in the game and all that. So to me that was wonderful. And once the games was on the app stores and people started downloading it, I had people reach out to me with like what they thought about the game and things like that. So it was a wonderful experience. And then now that I've done 2 games, I was like, okay, there's still time in my sabbatical. Let's do a 3rd game, right? But one of the key things I wanted to do was to actually unconsciously decide not to overwork. So Center Sim was where I worked too hard. So this time I was saying, okay, let's do game number 3, but make sure that I actually spend more time with my wife and my daughter. So what I did was I started following some really nice Twitch streamers. So shout out to Treacle and Subi. So I have their portraits over there. The 2 of them are really nice people, and they have very nice communities. So Twitch was a really fun way for me to develop Feisty Fauna. I could do it at a leisurely pace. I could get to know the community and so on. And both Treacle and Sumi have been great at promoting the game. So if you're wondering what Feisty Fauna is, it's kind of a casual roguelike like a Vampire Survivors, but like a very cute version. So this is like the trailer that I have. So if you're interested, the game is on Steam. The demo is available for download, so you can give it a try. And one cool fact about the video that you just saw is that my daughter, who's been involved in doing all the games that I showed you, she did a whole bunch of sound effects for this game as well. So like for example, when the foxes are jumping, the boop, boop, that's my daughter. The cats meowing and all that is also my daughter. And I usually call her the creative director for the games because she's the one that comes up with most of the cool ideas that we have in the game itself. And she's great at finding bugs. I'll create a version and I'm like, okay, come play the game. She'll try it and then she'll immediately like find a bunch of bugs for me to fix. So she's really great at that. So I created Feisty Fauna, or at least part of it, and I wanted to be able to publicize this. And what I did initially was to use Twitter to post about the progress of Feisty Fauna, and but the main audience was fellow game developers, which is a great community, but not quite the target audience. I heard that TikTok was a great place to do publicity. I posted a bunch of videos, hasn't had like a great hit yet, so not quite. Maybe I haven't got the formula right or something. And Twitch has been wonderful. So I talked about the streamers and their players, and a bunch of people who've played it have been really very engaged. They reach out to me with their comments and let me know like how they feel about the game and all of that. And one of the things I added was to actually add Twitch integration to the game. So this allows like streamers to play the game and their viewers to play along. So in the next video, you'll see a whole bunch of creatures on the screen, all of them with nameplates above their heads. Those are players that join in. So this is kind of a short clip about that.
So this is like, bullet hells, like Vampire Survivor, that sort of thing. This is like that. And I would not normally play these sorts of games, but this is a ridiculously cute version. It is so full of cuteness. It almost hurts how cute it is. Look at it.
Right. So that's Trickle playing it on stream, and she's been wonderful, and it's really fun to watch her players actually get engaged with the game as well. The other thing was to participate in Steam festivals. Like I created a Halloween level for the Steam Scarefest, and that was also a great way to publicize the game. So that was like most of my sabbatical, and in summer, that's kind of where I paused work on Feisty Fauna and started talking to companies to find my next role, and eventually I joined DoorDash Labs. So if interested to join us, we are hiring. My team in particular, where we are hiring, and as well as other teams. So reach out if you're interested. And what I found is that now that I'm working at a full-time job again, working on the game in my free time is actually really hard. So progress has been slow, but very rewarding. So overall, here are the kind of the lessons learned from my sabbatical. I started wondering whether I would get bored. So it turns out that I realized I wouldn't get bored. In fact, I might even get too busy. And the next lesson is don't get too busy, because then it's not quite a break if that happens. And family time is precious. Kids grow up very, very quickly. So if you have kids, try to involve them in your interests if possible. So these are pictures of my daughter over the years. We had her play with robots from a young age. And I have a video that I'm going to show where if you're familiar with machine learning and reinforcement learning, this is where you try to give rewards when something or someone does the right thing, positive reinforcement. So as background, my daughter came home from daycare one day, and whenever we asked her anything about colors, she would say green. And we're like, okay, she's learned to associate the word green with the word color with green, so we need to teach her other colors. So this is what we did.
What color is the mango? Yellow. What color is the mango? What color is the mango? Yellow. Yeah. What color is this? Is this green?
Right. So by doing that, my daughter learned to say yellow, and it turns out that overtraining is also possible in humans. So then after the exercise, she associated the word color with yellow. So we had to do a whole bunch of other examples to say there's other colors in the world too. So with that, I'm ending my talk. So thank you for listening. Here are some of my links. The first one is my personal webpage, and the second one, Atas Fun, is where I have links to the different games. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My goodness. Firstly, your daughter is so cute. And secondly, you have so many comments, people praising your game and obviously your talk in general. Thank you for your time. This was wonderful.
Thank you.